Hi, my name is Peter Moreno, as some of you know me, and I'm making this video with the intention to share my personal insights about what is happening with me during these tremendous changes that we're having in Europe and around the world with regards to the coronavirus. First of all, I always like to share my personal experience because I think it's authentic from my part to tell you how I struggle with it and what I have learned. Now, all the information I will share is related to my training as an integral coach and a gestalt psychologist or therapist. So, most of the information I'm sharing is also coming from my personal training and personal experience and other authors that I will be sharing today. I will try to make this video as short and to the point as possible because I know many of us we don't have that much time for this. So, what I want to say first is that all what is happening in different countries of Europe and in the world around this virus triggers a lot of change. Things that were used to be in one way, suddenly they are changing and they are different. Like we cannot send kids to school, we cannot work to work, we need to work remotely. We want to buy our favorite food on the supermarket, and suddenly the food is not there. Some people are losing their jobs, events are being cancelled, and all these changes, what triggers is grief. And what I noticed with myself is that I did not recognize that I was going into a grief process because I was losing a lot of the things I was used to have and use and to be in connection with. So whenever a human being is changing because of external circumstances or even internal, and these changes are kind of out of your control, we're gonna go into a grief process. Now, what does it mean to grieve? It means to go into an alterated state of consciousness when things do not work as they normally do. Now, we are lucky enough to have someone which is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a psychologist who described for us the 5 stages of grief. So before we go there, the most important thing is to notice that what is really happening to to many people, especially your loved ones, to you, is that you're in a grief process. So how do you recognize that? In my case, I was not able to sleep. I was dizzy during the day. I was having a lot of strong emotions coming up, like sadness, panic, anxiety, fear, anger, frustration. I was confused. So I noticed my psyche was alterated. It was not the normal person I was supposed to be, or I was used to be actually. So then I started to pay attention to myself, and then I discovered and I got it. I am in a grief process. I am losing many things that I'm used to use and relate to, like in the supermarket, like going to the events I like to go because all of them are canceled. So then I could see that this shock I was going into, it was because of all these changes. So the first thing is to name it and to recognize that you are in a grief process. That's essential to say, wow, I am in an alterated state of consciousness. I am having strong emotions. This is difficult for me, and this is called grief. So if you first accept that you are in grief, and I hope this video will help you recognize that, you will have already done half of the work, because the other half is to simply have the tools and the techniques to go through the stages of grief. So what are these stages? There are many names. There might be a lot of confusion because people have named the stages in different ways. I will try to give you the essence of these stages so you can recognize where you are and therefore get the support you need from yourself and from the people around you. So the first stage, according to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, is called denial. Now, denial is also seen as being in shock, being confused, being under fear and other emotions. I'm looking at my screen here next to me to don't remember remember all the words. So basically, in denial or shock, what we do is that we are not able to recognize that all these changes are having an emotional impact on us because it's very hard to digest. So there is a good reason why we don't do it, is because it's painful. So we go in denial or we are in shock, and therefore we cannot notice what is happening to us. In denial phase, we will say things like, no, nothing is happening, it's fine, this is just something that will come and go. And we will have all kind of explanations, which some of them are true actually. This will come and go. Everything shall pass. I totally agree with that. The thing is that if we don't recognize that while these things are going on, we are grieving and we are in a denial shock phase, we will not be able to have empathy for us and will not be able to relate to other people who are not in the denial phase. They might be already in the anger or guilt or emotional outpouring phase, which is the second phase. Some people call it anger or guilt. I prefer to see it as the stage in which we start to get in touch to the emotions that were frozen while we were in denial or in shock. So the second phase, we are really getting in touch with these emotions. Now, every person have a particular different way to relate to those emotions. Not everyone feels in the same way. So in the second phase, if you have a more tendency to experience fear, panic, anxiety, worry, you will be having those emotions. And in order to help you with that, you will need to develop the ability to stay with these emotions and do not react, to be able to feel these emotions in your body and get emotional or psychological support to be able to process those emotions. First is to address the emotion, then is to process the emotion, then is to integrate the emotion and put it on perspective that this situation will pass. We are not going to be in this crisis for the next 20 years. Many people will have this thought. They don't know how long it will take. So if we are able to come back to the present moment, we will be able to notice that the current conditions will change again. And I really hope with my whole heart and soul that it will be in a positive way. So some people will go into fear, anxiety, worry. Other people will have other emotions like anger, frustration, irritation. They will want to fight because there is something going on that they don't want it to happen. It will feel that it's not fair. Why do we have this? And they will want to fight and go against the situation. Now, if this is the kind of response you're having, you also need a different kind of emotional support that will go more into how can you express this anger, this rage in a healthy way without attacking other people, without becoming violent with yourself or others. Because in these complex situations, a bit chaotic, there is no one that is really the end responsible. It's so complex, there are so many variables that we cannot put this into one person. So you will need to have the space to be able to ventilate those anger, rage emotions without attacking or being violent with yourself and others. Another group of people will have more the emotions around shame, guilt, going along with the situation, trying to find ways to please or compensate or being the best friend, like really being the supportive person for others and not taking care of themselves. Like as if the emotional experience of others will be more important than yours. Both are equally important. So you will be putting, if you are in that category, you will be putting other people in the first place and you will be in a second place, and you will not be able to feel your emotions, but you will be experiencing the emotions of others. So if that's your case, you will need to be able to keep the empathy with others and at the same time pay attention to what is happening to you, because the consequence could be that you will be so overwhelmed in the long run that you will not be able to support other people because you're not doing this with yourself in the first place. So pay attention to your emotions, also take care of yourself if you are in that category. So we have basically three categories. The first one around fear, anxiety, and worry. Second one about anger, frustration, and rage, like really strong emotions in that sense. Well, all of these are strong emotions, by the way. And the third category is more about guilt, shame, and paying more attention to other people rather than to yourself. So in the second phase of grief is the emotional outpouring. So you are starting to feel all of these emotions. So we go from denial or shock phase into feeling the emotions that were frozen in the first phase. The next phase is when we start to negotiate or to, I think they call it bargaining in English, or I prefer to call it negotiation because it's more easier to see it. We start to negotiate, like if I cannot go to this festival, I will dance at home. my case, for example, because I am a dancer. Or if I cannot go to work and be with my colleagues, I will try to see them via Skype. So I try to get something that will compensate the loss. So I'm also a coach and a therapist. So if I cannot be with my clients, I will try to connect them via Skype. So it's not, none of these phases are bad or wrong. We just need to recognize them and to see, now I am negotiating, I'm bargaining, because it's so painful to lose what I so deeply want that I want to negotiate. For example, in the negotiation phase, people will go and buy many things that they don't need, because if I lost all of this, I will compensate by buying stuff. Well, a lot of people also do this in the denial shock phase, and they just go and buy more than what they need. I fully agree that we need to have some reserves. However, buying too much might also have a largest impact in the economy and in the supply chain system, especially in Europe. So it's not that we need to denial that nothing is happening or become very reactive and start doing things that we will normally not do. We need to find the balance, the middle path, just in the middle. What can I do that is reasonable, that is mature to deal with the situation? Now, if you see yourself negotiating, know that you're negotiating because it's difficult to let go so much. Well, there's so many people losing so much at the moment, and that's why they need to know that they're grieving, that it's a grief process. So what happens after we negotiate? We go into the stage that is called depression. Now, this is not psychological depression, as we will maybe use it as a diagnosis in psychology. It's more a going inward, deep inside yourself, to prepare yourself for the next stage, which is acceptance. Now, when we are in this depression phase, every person will experience in a different way. There will be hostility or a withdrawal from life, or a sensation of not finding meaning for what is happening. So I want to make this short because I could go into the different categories of how every person experiences this depression, but essentially we go inward because we want to find meaning for what is happening, and we are preparing to accept the situation as it is. Now, in this process, I may go back to emotions I had in the emotional outpouring phase, or anger, or frustration, or fear, or I will go back to denial, or to being choked, or to bargaining. Actually, all these phases, they don't happen in a sequence. In one day, you can have all of them. That's very important to remember. That not because you went out of the denial, you will not go back again into it, because there are so many things changing that we can easily try to denial one aspect of the situation. Maybe we accepted that we cannot send the kids to school. That one maybe we accept and we're not denying this, but maybe the fact that we might have not to see our colleagues and go to the office for a couple of weeks, maybe that one we want to negotiate. We are not ready to accept that. So we were in shock. So in the fourth phase, when we are going inward, the depression phase is a healthy depression, because we are trying to regenerate ourselves, adapting our patterns, our whole mental space, emotional space, to be able to accept what is really happening and notice that this situation have negative impact, but it also has positive impact. As we see today, for example, that the overall ecological or environmental situation in China has improved because the fabrics are closed and therefore the air is cleaner, or we have more time to be with our family members, which might be very positive for some people, maybe for others it's another grief process. So there are also positive consequences of all of this. There are very negative ones, very painful ones. So as we go inward, we will start to accept all of this and create perspective. Perspective to be able to go to the last phase, which is acceptance. And in acceptance, we are being reborn like the phoenix that is being reborn from the ashes, which means that our psyche is ready to accept the changes and go back out of the non-ordinary state of consciousness to accept what is happening and therefore move on, having integrated the experience. Now, what so many people do is to bypass the grief by getting distracted into something else, because you need a lot of emotional support to live your grief in a healthy way. So my invitation here is try to get help and support from anyone who have the expertise to help you digest your emotions, integrate and find meaning on this experience so you can grow and evolve from this. Now, an additional piece of information that is equally valid and necessary to know beyond grief is that in every stage or overall, when we are confronted to a big change in our lives, emotional trauma or pain that was hidden inside will come to the surface so we can deal with it, process and address it, and therefore grow and heal. Now, what can this be? It could be, for example, and here I will expose myself. In my case, I was born in Chile. I'm living in Europe, and I came to Europe because I was looking for stability, structure, order, a country that is really like stable for me, because Chile have areas that is stable and areas where it's not. So for my personal story, it was not stable enough, the kind of childhood of human experience I had there. It might be different for other people. So when I came to Europe, I came with looking for that. And now that I see what is happening and the supermarkets getting empty and people having all kind of responses and people talking about potential economical regression, I'm in panic, afraid that the Europe I was used to have in my psyche will disappear, which is not true because it's gonna simply change. We don't know how it will change, and no one has the crystal ball, but it's changing, and this triggering me memories of my past that are in my case a positive sign that I still need to go deeper to heal my human experiences of the past. Now, for you, it can be different because it will have to do with your personal experience, your past. You're looking backward in your life and see with what is happening today, what gets triggered. I had a friend, for example, he couldn't go to festivals, he couldn't go to events, everything was canceled. And this felt like when I was with my father and my mother and did not allow me to go out. I needed to always do something to have permission to go out, and he was quite restricted. So all these restrictions triggered back on him that pain. I have seen other people who had memories of war and not having food, that when they see that the supermarkets are getting empty, they start to remember the stories that they heard from their ancestors about war and not having enough supply of food. So they were feeling really unsettled and unsafe. I saw the people more worry about the behaviors of other people, becoming angry and aggressive and having the feeling that, are we on war again? Like, are people going to become crazy? What is going to happen? I have seen people very concerned about their health. I'm gonna die. Is this virus gonna kill me or my loved ones? Very afraid of death. So I invite you to also pay attention to what is being triggered in your personal story due to these changes and the stages of grief. Because if you are able to do these two things at the same time, which is quite a lot, I know, because it's not easy to ask what I'm inviting you to do. What I can tell you is that you will have more tools to go through this, knowing in which state of the grief you are, either denial, either emotional outpouring, or you are in the stage of negotiation or depression or acceptance. That's one piece of the work, and the other one is to see what part of your personal story is being triggered so you can understand yourself. Even more importantly, sometimes is to understand your loved ones, what people around you are going through, so you can understand and have empathy for each other, to see, wow, this person is now in denial. So why will I start a discussion to convince them that it's really serious what is happening? The person is in denial, that what the person needs is to simply be understood, accept as it is, and in one moment the person will move to the next stage. because it's not that you can force people to move. Actually, everyone has their own rhythm, their own path. What we can do is to be very aware of our own stage and what is happening to us, and therefore be more available to offer our heart and our empathy to other people. I'm also recording this video to offer my help and support. If any of you that are watching this video need some support, reach out to me. I will see what I can do to help, especially the people that are closer to me, and yeah, and be of service during this process. So, as a summary, be aware of which stage of grief you are. First, recognize that you might be in grief. You might not, but the chances are quite high because these changes are affecting all of us. Then try to see if you have the self-awareness to see what pain of your past is being triggered, and hold that inside yourself and know that this is what is happening to you, and therefore follow all the advice coming from the authorities on taking care of your health, doing sport, eating healthy. Me personally, I pay a lot of attention to my immune system, taking vitamin C and taking a Hinacea or anything that for me works to make my immune system strong. So if the virus comes, it will just give me some medical assistant that is quite. I will need medical assistant that is quite reasonable, and so on and so forth. So that was my intention, to share with you this piece of information, send you my support, and tell you you are not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You are simply going through a grief process. Your emotional pain from the past is coming up again, and you, as me, need emotional and human connection to go through all of this. So I hope this was of any value to you. Reach out if you need help. I hope you have a nice, well, it's very hard to wish that. I'm quite sure most of us we're not going to have a nice day. I wish you consciousness and empathy to be with yourself and your loved one through this experience. My name is Peter Moreno, and I hope we stay in touch. Bye.